And we're off. What's up, folks? Happy Thursday. 15th. We're halfway through the month. No, it's February. We're over halfway through the month. Look at that. Just realizing how the calendar works here. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can. Oh, is that louder? Maybe. It's louder for me. Looks like it's coming through. Let me just do this. Just to be sure. Just to be sure. If you haven't heard anything I've said up until now, you can definitely hear me now. Okay. So, how you like that title? Just see whatever you want, right? Our principle this week is the human body needs to enjoy food regardless of nutritional value on occasion in order to survive and thrive. And, there's part of this that is kind of saying, hey, yeah, just eat whatever you want, right? Occasionally, we need to do that. Occasionally, we need to have that type of loosening up, right? Letting go. And this is one of our nutritional principles, okay? This is like maybe one of the more confusing principles, because when we're saying, hey, there's all different kinds of diets and different ways of eating out there. And very few of them are going to have a place for pizza and ice cream and, some alcohol consumption, right? They're going to tell you, hey, no, those things are bad for you, right? And we're not disagreeing with that by any means. Most pizza is bad for you. Most ice cream is bad for you. All alcohol is biologically bad for you. We can dig into that a little differently, maybe today, maybe a different time. But how many lifestyle plans, diet plans, are going to make room for the fact that life is life, right? We don't adhere to 100%, perfect eating. And we don't want to say, hey, when you've done that, you've failed, right? When you have eaten pizza or ice cream or whatever, you've failed. Psychologically, there's issues with that. And it's like, it can very easily turn into a binary thing. Well, it's like, oh, because I eat ice cream, I actually don't eat healthy, and so why bother any of the other time, right? But what we do when we include this principle in our overall teaching on health and how do we eat, what we're saying is we're bringing into the fold the times where we're not actually making decisions about what to eat because it is the healthiest and most nutritious thing that we could be doing, right? Because we know that is a part of life. And actually, we can get benefit from situations, mostly social environments, that lend themselves to, not being the best nutritionally, right? Even enjoying what we can do with food in a way that is actually super enjoyable. It just is not necessarily the thing that you want to comprise all of your meals out of, right? There's something magical that happens when you make a crust out of bread and you throw some tomatoes all mashed up with some spices and you spread that on top of there. And then you sprinkle a bunch of cow's milk that's been, whipped and separated from the water content. And I don't even know how you make cheese, actually. Whatever you do to turn milk into cheese. And then you sprinkle that on top of there, and you throw it in this friggin' hot oven, right? And there's something magical that happens there. And when you put that in your mouth and you taste all these things mixed together, right? Or how about another milk one, right? When you take that milk and you separate the cream from it and you add a good amount of sugar into there and you almost freeze it, right? But you keep churning it up and right before it's like frozen solid, it's a semi-solid state. You consume that. Magical, right? And just because these things aren't what we should be comprising all of our meals out of does not mean that we should not enjoy them, right? And what we're saying here is we want to have times where we can do that, where we can put the enjoyment above the fact that, no, this is not providing you with tons of good, high-quality nutrition. And it allows us to say, hey, how should we really approach this, right? If we're saying, yep, you can live a healthy lifestyle and, pizza can be included with that. And pizza and ice cream, that's just like the top of the list, man. This could be something totally different, right? It allows us to create parameters around those things, right? When are we going to do that? When are we going to allow that thing to happen? How frequently are we going to be able to do that, right? And so we have some real easy things that we can say. It's like, okay, to the degree that it doesn't, lead to diabetes, right? Or it doesn't lead to, other issues, right? It's like, okay, that's kind of an easy one, right? But maybe it's like, you're cool with, a slightly higher body fat percentage that's really not high enough to be at risk for any other disease, right? And it's one that allows you to enjoy something maybe more frequently, right? Not to a point that is gluttonous, not to a point that is, has other negative effects, but maybe more so than if you were trying to live at a lower body fat percentage and look different, look a little better, right? So there's we can get pretty granular with this, right? And so ultimately the question boils down to some objective realities of how minimal we need to keep this to, fend off the negative effects of, standard American diet and all this stuff. But then it kind of comes down to, what's your goal, right? What is your goal? Maybe you have a performance-related goal that, requires you to be leaner, right? It's kind of a simple example. And so maybe you can only do this once a week. Maybe it only looks like, enjoying, one bowl of ice cream, right? It's not like a full day where you just don't even think about anything and do whatever you want, right? So, there's a lot of play here. The main point is that we don't want to mentally fall off the rails. When you go to your Super Bowl party and hey, there's nothing really redeemable to eat there, and you partake, and it's not the end of the world, right? I don't want you to be stressed about that. The stress that you add on top of eating that stuff, you're worse. You are worse off. You are less healthy because you layered in stress on top of whatever nutritionally is going on there, right? So that's one of the big things that we're trying to cut out here. Gosh, man, I told myself I was going to not be long-winded today. And at the same time, maybe today's question is it's kind of one of my favorite ones. I just like it. Is there anything that is still off limits to you? Right? No matter what. So that's not to say like we can't enjoy things. I think everybody needs to figure out what works for them as far as this principle goes. But for me, I have a ton of stuff. Right? There's stuff that like the enjoyment of X, Y, and Z is not worth the physically the physical negative side effects, right, of my skin breaking out and my mind freaking out, not being able to think, my gut freaking out. Like, those things are not worth it to me, right? And so there's tons of stuff that's just like, okay, even when I am in a situation where it's like I'm not going to be concerned with, how many grams of protein I'm getting and blah, 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 there's still a line I'm not willing to cross because it is so high. The negative outcome is so high, right? But even though there might be some temporary enjoyment from, like, let's say a Twinkie, for example, right? When that hits your mouth and you chew on that, and like, boy, there's a taste there that most people would say is enjoyable. But the negative of that thing, right? And maybe it's that enjoyment isn't actually high enough for the negative of knowing what you're eating to be worth it, right? There's multiple people I heard today say that, yeah, those type of like Little Debbie snack cake type of things, it's just like there's no appeal to those things. Or soda, for example, right? Drinking high fructose corn syrup, it's just not worth it, right? And so like the more clear we get about those types of things, and the more clear we get about what we really do receive the most enjoyment out of, because I think that's probably the maybe the more important part of this principle is food really is intended to be enjoyed. And if you get maximum enjoyment out of, I don't know, maybe it's fettuccine Alfredo, right? And that's a meal that you're not going to partake in on a regular basis, right? But it's like you get more enjoyment out of that than a donut, right? Maybe you decide that, yeah, like donuts don't really jazz me up all that much. So it's like, even if they're there and it's like, it wouldn't be a big deal. It's like, maybe you just don't do it because it's like, yeah, it's not really worth it. Right. So yeah, I think those are the types of things that we want to be thinking about with this. Okay. If we're more thoughtful about this, and if we decide, yep, like I'm not going to like loosen up on my normal diet until I can go eat the fettuccine or whatever that thing might be, it's helpful in how we can actually behave and put this into practice, right? All right, enough about that. We worked out this week. A couple of workouts I wanted to touch on. So Mondays, all right? So Monday we did this little interval piece of an old CrossFit Games Open workout. The workout was 19.1. That means in 2019, this was the first workout. So the original thing, I don't remember what the time domain was, but it was 19 wall balls and 19 calories on the rower. And this thing I want to talk about here. I'm a short guy, 5'8", literally just measure myself. It's a long way up to throw that stupid 20-pound ball. So I don't like wall balls. I don't like having to toss that thing up that high. Not very good at it. And so I already approach a workout like this with like, oh man, like, not in my wheelhouse, right? So I remember doing this in 2019, and a bunch of people getting together doing these workouts, and I was not in the first heat. I was watching some other guys do it in the first heat. And I am not expecting to do these wall balls unbroken. And then I watch a guy who's like my size or smaller do it unbroken. And I'm like, crap, dude. Now I have to do that. Right? Now I have to hang on to it and do something that's going to hurt, that I don't want to do, that I'm not good at, right? But I got to do it, right? He did it. I can't be a wuss and not do what he just did. And so this workout specifically was one of those workouts for me. It was like, okay, I didn't know that I could do those sets of 19 with a conflicting movement pattern in the row and keep going back to that and keep doing that. But I did it, right? Mostly from the challenge that was set before me by somebody else doing it first. But it's like through that I found out, okay, I can do this thing, right? So, now fast forward to the format that we did this week. So same movements, same rep scheme. But what I did was I added some rest, just a little 30-second rest in between rounds on it. Okay. And talked about this before, but what rest does is it allows us to increase intensity when we're actually working. So the work that we're doing should be harder, faster, increase the pace, more so than what we would do if thrust was not there, right? And one of the ways we can do that is on any given movement, it's, hang on to a bigger set, right? Not have to break something up or, a stronger pace on the row, for example. And so, this is one of those workouts where it's like, I am not mechanically advantaged to be able to do wall balls quickly, right? But, so I won't throw him under the bus, but did this workout right next to somebody who is way better at wall balls than me. Okay. Hands down. But that little bit of rest allowed me to kind of attack a little bit more, on a movement that I know I'm not very good at, to the point that just that little bit of extra confidence, because I was coming back to it, rested every time, allowed me to push in intensity and hang on to bigger sets than I would have otherwise, right? If this was, if there was no rest there, I wouldn't have hung on to as big of sets, but that little piece, right? It just kind of plays with your mind. There's some confidence that comes and allows us to do something physically. There's a mental confidence that translates into what actually ends up happening, what you actually end up doing. And that rest is just enough to kind of get us there, right? And so I beat him. It was enough, right? So that's one of the values of using rest well in a workout, right? There's certain workouts where you get going and, a classic move is there's rest in a workout and somebody's like, I don't want to take the rest. I just want to keep going. Okay. Well, what that tells me is you're not actually working hard enough. You're not actually going strong enough, holding a high enough pace, high enough output to need that rest, right? Because if you were, you wouldn't be thinking that. That's how you use rest, right? Use it appropriately. Cool. What else we got here? So today we had this, high volume pushing and pulling. It was a muscular fatigue type of workout. I kind of just came up with this format on a fly. So what we did was 5-minute AMRAP, as many rounds as possible in 5 minutes of an ascending rep scheme. Okay, so 5 pull-ups, 5 push-ups, 10, 10, 15, 15, right? Adding 5. Rest. Today was 3 minutes. And then it said, hey, wherever you got to, start there. Now work backwards for time, right? So, not super great in like a competitive environment where you're, scoring and whatnot. Although I suppose, it's the first part, the number of reps in the first part is kind of like the main thing. Cause it's like, okay, you could sandbag that part and do the thing backwards really super fast. But the goal would be, hey, push hard on the first part, but then when you descend, right? Again, playing with these mind things and the pacing and all of that. When you descend in reps, it allows you to increase intensity, right? It allows you to, go back to your next set and, as fatigue is accumulating, you've got less and less work to do, right? And so that allows you to, jump up to the bar quicker, right? Or, hit the floor and get to work faster, right? Or squeeze out a couple more reps, right? When if you had more work to do, you'd be thinking about, okay, how do I break this up and manage the fatigue, right? So, the ascending rep scheme is the total opposite, right? And to prove that, I think there's maybe myself and one other person were the only people who didn't complete the second half of this under 5 minutes, right? So you already did a bunch of work, okay? Half of the work you're accomplishing in this whole workout, you've already done it, right? That you're already carrying that weight. Yes, you've got a little bit of rest, but it's like, you don't recover fully from all that work you just did. Especially on a workout like this where it's very, very much, so it's upper body when it's got a high, just muscular stamina element to it. Like you don't recover fast from that. But then to be able to go out and by data produce at a higher intensity, right? Produce, force is what we're doing at a higher intensity. The format of this stuff matters, right? If I said, what I ended up doing was 100 reps of each of these movements. If I said, hey, go perform 100 reps of both of these, here's the time and stuff, like the way in which I go about that matters pretty significantly, right? And this like descending rep scheme really helps to be able to do that and keep intensity high, right? Because essentially what you're doing is you're taking advantage of being in a rested state early, and as you get more tired, you make those sets smaller so that you don't rest as much. That's what it boils down to, right? How do I spend more time working and accomplishing work and less time doing nothing, right? And the more we can eliminate the doing nothing part, higher the intensity is going to get, the more work we accomplish in less time, right? That's the whole thing. This whole idea. Cat's out of the bag, right? So those rep schemes, they matter. All right, moving on. Next week's going to be fun because a couple reasons. Moving on to our movement principles, okay? Moving away, this week was our last nutritional tenet. We stop talking about food for a little while and start talking about movement. So that'll be fun. And then it's our last full week of like regular programming before we start the Open, right? So we got this weird thing that always happens during the CrossFit Games Open, because during those weeks we don't know the workout until middle of the day on Thursday. Okay. So what we're going to do this year, what we normally do is I like to program those workouts for Saturday, right? So the whole reason I do that is so we can go through and have somewhat of a normal week, right? Since we don't know what's coming up on Saturday, the goal would be not to interfere with it a ton, especially the, later half of the week. But we can, without even knowing, we can still do things that are not going to kind of break us down in a highly detrimental way, a way that's going to be highly detrimental to performance. Stuff that's not going to make you super sore. Today would not be an example of that. I'm expecting to have some tightness in the old elbows tomorrow, just because of the volume and the nature of this workout, right? And we don't want to do that when we're trying to optimize performance. So, because of that, I like pushing it to Saturday, so that gives kind of that one little flex day, right? If it's like, hey, we've got pull-ups programmed on Thursday, and there's pull-ups on Saturday, it's like, oh, shoot, right? Didn't know that was coming. But at least it gives us one day in between, right, to not have that, to recover a little bit. And it helps us to determine, like, okay, if we got a bunch of upper body pulling coming on Saturday, well, we could do some lower body squatting, pushing, like whatever, and it's really not going to interfere with that, on Friday. So, just a little bit of those kinds of things. And heck, I'm the one who's got to worry about it the most to make sure that I'm setting you all up for success. So all you have to do is continue to show up, right? But that's coming. So next week will be our last full regular week, and then open. CrossFit Games Open. Are you signed up yet? I'm signed up. That starts, what is that day? So the announcement will be Thursday the 29th, and the first time we're doing it will be on Saturday the 2nd, right? Cool. That's all I got for today. Stay tuned. Sign up for the email. Buy yourself a shirt. Got a different shirt on today again. It's not black. Look at that. It's not black. I even got a gray shirt on underneath this. Look at that, right? Just got black pants. That's it.